Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. I'm Kevin McPherson. Packed house here in the 501, out to see John Calipari in the One Razorback Roadshow. Hunter Yurachek, some other dignitaries, the new women's head basketball coach, Kelsey Music, excuse me. It was a packed house earlier this evening. Went out there. We had a media scrum with Cal right at the beginning, right before the event was actually to start, and got to ask some questions. Everybody on social media that I would be asking him about this next roster, second roster at Arkansas, with some specific questions, including what about Boogie Fland now that he's withdrawn from the. And these were very non-specific, generic answers. I figured it'd be something like that. Didn't know exactly how it would come over, but probably about the course here. But I think that we can take from some of this. Look, it's been a whirlwind for me. I was in Oklahoma City yesterday for what was an incredible Game 5. Series was tied 2-all. Thunder big home win over Denver Nuggets. Covered that event. Got home at about 5:30 this morning, and I've been doing a little prep work today for some other stuff I'm working on through the rest of the week, with a commitment announcement coming tomorrow for 2026. Jashawn J.J. Andrews here in the 501, and then Memphis stuff all weekend for the first live eval period. I expect Cal and some of Arkansas's assistant coaches to be in Memphis this weekend. So a lot going on, but just the little stop on this One Razorback Roadshow for Calipari was pretty cool. I mean, I covered this last year right after he'd been hired. Similar setup, different venue. Place was packed. A lot of energized Razorback fans here locally at Fossler Hall in downtown Little Rock. And look, I want to thank all the people. A ton of folks came up to me and introduced themselves, thank me for what I do, said they enjoy watching the show, said they got nothing better to do late at night but to stay up and watch some of it. So I appreciate that. I apologize to all of them. No, but it was good to meet a lot of you. It was really cool. Even Hunter Yurachek came up to me and asked me if I had any basketball intel for him today, which we both kind of got a laugh out of that, but he did it in a way where the eyes were making contact, and he was letting me know that he wants me on that wall. He needs me on that wall. So, maybe deep down at parties where jokes are being made about it, by the incel frat boy chat room network going nowheres. That's what it is. But it was all fun. And then Calipari shows up, rolls in, and, we start firing away questions. And, he was in Memphis yesterday and talked about the, upcoming potential for the upcoming charity exhibition game against the Tigers team he used to coach. A lot of history with recruiting at Arkansas and games between the two programs back in the day. A lot of good reasons to do it. He talked a little bit, I think, initially about that. And then I fired away. What about this roster? What about a Carter Knox if you get him back? Are you looking to, that would get you back to 10. So if you get Carter back, and either including him or in addition to him, what else do you need for the roster? And I'm going to quote what he said. I've already tweeted this video out with his words, but I'm going to go ahead and quote it. Well, it will play out. I like what we have. I like where we stand right now. We have the ability to do more if we choose. Sometimes less is more. Like last year, we ended up playing 6 guys, 7 guys, and all of a sudden we're as good as anybody in the country. So we'll see how it plays out. We're ready for whatever happens. All right, so, we've been talking about when we were told to pump the brakes, and we were bringing stuff here for the last several weeks after the 2 big men were brought in, and you had the retention announcements from everybody. And we thought, okay, what's the next big prize to fall in out of the portal for Arkansas? And then we got radio silence and everything shut down and told, this may be it. And, you hear different things. Maybe they add 1 more. Maybe it's a back-end piece. Maybe they're going to add 2 more. For a minute, we thought maybe they'll still find a way to add a splash piece. And that likely would happen if Carter Knox were to stay in the NBA draft. But minus that, it just seems like there's not really much in play. They went radio silent, not only with their activity in the transfer portal, but anything. I mean, international players, even when you hear word about some international players and teams that are interested, no mention of Arkansas. Some of the high school players that are remaining out there, no mention of Arkansas. There's still a few high level guys, not really 5 stars, but maybe some stuff that would play if you were interested. So it's been radio silence, other than kicking the tires on Terrion Burgess. Talks there about maybe there's a path for him at Arkansas. I've been able to confirm from both sides that that's a real thing. But does he choose that, or choose to, go somewhere where he'll have an immediate role and also some NIL? So we'll see what the decision, what shakes out there. But if you added him and got Carter back, that'd be 11, and you have really a true 2 deep, playable under pretty much any circumstance, 8 deep rotation with 3, kind of emergency pieces. You don't know how much of that, when you look at guys like Isaiah Seeley, Kareem Artal, and Terrion Burgess, if you added him, because we know they already have Artal and Seeley, how much of that's emergency, how much of it's development, if there a red shirt to be done in there, what does that look like? Small roles, what, who knows? But the way that, well, it looks like we got disconnected. So I don't know what I was doing, but I had a little thing come up and disconnected. So you might have missed something there. But the idea is Calipari's talking points didn't stray far from what I've been at staff, is they may not do anything more other than get Carter back if they can. Calipari said it in the retention video. We're not done yet. Was that just talking about one more back end piece that may not really play much, if at all? So was it meant to be more than that? I would think if it was more of a, give them minutes, and guys like Seeley and Artal, I could even envision some kind of minutes allocation on an average. Although I don't doubt that if they're available, that they'll play at some point based on attrition or whatever. Just looking at the plan, I just don't even see a minutes allocation for them. So we talked about that. Then I broke it down in 2 following segments and position groups: guards and wings and front court, bigs. And we went back through minutes. We talked all SEC potential. We kind of looked at everything. We compared it to last year's roster. And one of the things I said was, and it was one of the points I made on one of these recent pods, if you really look at last year when Arkansas was at a full 9 deep, where everybody was healthy and available to play, the only team they won, the only game they won, and beating a team with a pulse, was Michigan and New York City in December. And even in that game, Adu Thero didn't play his full allotment of minutes because he was ill. Remember, I think they started him and then kind of took him out early and managed his minutes. The point is that what Calipari's saying is right, is less was more, in terms of once they got in a groove, just by a measure of attrition. Go back to Boogie Fland. People blame Boogie for all the problems. It wasn't that. It was that by him being out, it created more opportunities for guys like DJ Wagner and Nelly Davis and even Carter Knox to play more minutes in their natural positions in roles that are preferred for their talents. And it just kind of worked that way. Okay, Adu Thero keeps playing, and you're starting to win some games. He had some hero moments in some of those early big wins in conference play. Then he goes out the backstretch. He had 4 more games left after that Missouri game when he went down with about 6 minutes left the game, didn't return. And you had to find a way to dig out the end of that game to win it, and you did it without him. And then you moved on and continued to win, and so you were down to a 7 rotation, and some of your best wins, you kept winning, picking those up without him. So it's 2 things are going on at once. 2 things, or more than 2 things, can even be true at once. You don't want to be in a situation where you're damned because you don't have enough depth, and injuries, a couple of injuries and some foul trouble puts you in a situation where you have to play completely in a style or a way in a matchup that you don't want to, and you have to by default. You don't want that. But at the same time, if you knew that you weren't going to have injuries, he's probably right. Less is a little bit more. The other thing is Arkansas survived injuries and got a little bit better, so he can go back to that. Because at one point when they were struggling there, the word was coming back, hey, they're going to put more money into this, or as much as needed to expand the roster and go to 11 deep. He even said that somewhere in some interview or some media opportunity. Okay. Is this cutting now? I think someone's saying they can't hear it. We may be getting a bad quality here. I don't know. I know it disconnected for a minute. Can't hear half of what I'm saying. Okay. I apologize. I don't know how often this happens, but um, so when you're looking at less is more, it's a function of Arkansas did maybe perform a little bit better even when some of their key guys went out and they just kept on keeping on. But let's say something similar happens and it's the wrong guys, and you don't keep on keeping on, and you just don't have enough to answer. It could tank your season. I don't think that's the best way to go about it. But he's not wrong in the fact that it worked out okay last year. You could also say, well, you lost 14 games and went 8 and 10 in the SEC. How much of that was a function of not having guys healthy enough for most of the year? I mean, even though Nelly Davis was playing most of the games, he had a wrist injury. You didn't really have a shooting guard out to back to plug and play with him struggling for a while. You had DJ and Boogie. You look at it this time, you're losing that 41% 3-point shooter that they were bringing in Nelly, and a veteran guy who'd been to help get to a Final Four, and you're replacing that with a 5-star freshman shooting guard. You've got more experience in DJ. You get him back, and you're back to a 5-star McDonald's All-American freshman point guard who's going to play a butt load of minutes in A-Cuff versus what Boogie was doing. So in some ways, you're kind of mirroring the numbers. A mostly lead guard, a combo in DJ, I guess, who played really his best basketball on the ball and is the primary lead, and a shooting guard. That's your 3 deep there. You've got your 2 wings back if Carter comes back, going from freshmen to sophomores. Carter and Billy Richmond III, who played a little on the ball, interesting experiment. And then on the front line, you're back to Trevor Brazile plus 2 big men. Last year it was Big Z and Jonas Adu. This time around it's Malik Ewan and Nick Pringle fresh out of the portal. So you're very similarly built. The only difference is you also had to do Thero at your 3-4 combo, and you're not necessarily going to fill that spot. So that's a hole, right? If you're just comparing it to a 9 deep last year. But again, Calipari's right. They probably did play a little better when they didn't have 9, when they were down to 8 and then 7. And for a while, Big Z got to the point where you couldn't keep him on the court very long, so they were kind of down to 6 for a minute there. And then you got in the NCAA tournament, and Boogie came back and played a weird role off the bench, and he actually helped him, but that's not the kind of role he wants. We're going to talk more about Boogie, and let's get back to these Calipari quotes, but just examining that first part of it, if you do what it looks like now, you got 10, maybe you add 11th guy, a guy like Burgess or something like that, maybe. If not him, something similar, a back end piece. And so you're really in a true 8 deep in your two rotation. In your first starting group and the 3 that come off the bench, you've gone to actually play to 10 or 11 from only having 9, because everybody else last year outside that top 9 was never going to play in a game that mattered, a situation that mattered. So in a way, you're kind of maybe splitting the baby there. You're maybe not fortifying things as well as you could with your depth on the front line. Some kind of competent guy with college minutes and experience at the 4 spot, or a 4-5 combo. Maybe it's one that can shoot a little bit to give you a little more, because that's the other area. How about an experienced guard that can shoot? That's where we get into Boogie Fland, right? So right after I asked him about the roster and any more additions, and I read you the quote, I followed up with Boogie. What about him? He's out of the draft. Any pathway for him to come back to Arkansas? Here's what he said. He didn't say a lot on this one. We always said, I have his back. Whatever he needs from us and me, I love coaching him. We'll see how it plays out. So we'll see how it plays out. Now, look, we've said a lot that there didn't seem to be a good pathway back for Boogie. We thought he'd be in the draft, stay in the draft, be committed to that, chance of a late first round, maybe early to mid second round. And he backed out. We talked about it last night after showing up to the combine of all things, after getting all the initial feedback from all 30 teams. All the players get that when they enter the draft process. They get those reports back. And then he decides to accept the combine invite. He goes in, does the measurements, and is named to, apparently declared that he was going to compete, because there's 4 rosters with scrimmage stuff that began today with 2 scrimmages. We'll talk about Carter Knox here in a little bit and how that looked to me, because I got to watch that today. Maybe some of you did as well. But Boogie backs out. He withdraws, and through his agent Mike Miller, the Florida Gator at the time, he played with Florida around the time that Joe Johnson was balling out at Arkansas. So the late '90s, early 2000s, longtime NBA guy. Used to be one of LeBron's favorite players. A guy that LeBron carried for a while on some of the rosters, but a longtime NBA guy. The MM3 basketball organization was his, that played on the Adidas 3SSB circuit. And he had to get his name off of that once he became a college assistant coach with Penny Hardaway over at Memphis. So there's, but a Florida guy where he played in college. And that's Boogie's agent. And so, it looks like maybe Boogie potentially is looking at Florida. We keep hearing that, right? The NBA scouts that are attending this that I talked to, I told you they're at the combine. They got there early, and they're sending me messages talking about the same thing that everybody else is. Man, the word around here is like wildfire. Florida looks like the big name in play for Boogie Fland, and something's happening here. All right, well, we'll see. Does Arkansas really have a place for him? This is a guy that was looking to be a first-round pick. He's not looking to come back to Arkansas to play spot minutes off the bench or even as a starter, sharing lead guard roles with not one but two other guards. I just don't see that. I see him having, whether the NIL, and I don't think Arkansas is going to pay up a ton of NIL for a player unless it has some vision they can sell to everybody, him, DJ, Acuff, on how that's going to work and how they're all going to get their minutes and run the team. And there's other schools out there that have a need, that need a guy to run the show and that can profile him and give him the kind of exposure that Arkansas can. Florida, defending national champs. Come on. There's other teams out there. It's just hard for me to envision. Now, does Boogie have qualities that Arkansas seems to be lacking in the current roster build? Of course. That can be true too. He's got experience. He's got a great assist to turnover ratio. Until, SEC play and then that thumb injury, he was a good, a more than competent three-point shooter. And when you watch him shoot, you understand that, he can build on that and actually get to a place where he's really good as a three-point shooter. He's certainly, just from the look of him and the way that he shoots, better not only statistically than compared to DJ last year, but even how I would even project Acuff moving forward. Now we'll see about that. So there are things there you say, well, you just said we need those kind of things. Yeah, but I think the difference is you've got too much of the same thing in terms of what their strengths are. Okay, let's go back to Kentucky a couple of years ago. I talked about this on one of these segments. We were back before Boogie announced he was going in the draft, and there was a potential that maybe Arkansas was going to try to find a way to retain him. And I didn't think it made a whole lot of sense. And we were talking about, it came up, what about, I had someone ask me, what about at Kentucky the year before? They had Rob Dillingham. They had DJ Wagner. They had Reed Shepard. They had Antonio Reeves. True. All true. And what did I say? I said the biggest difference was those guys did take turns playing on the ball, some more than others. But outside of DJ, every one of those players was not competent. They weren't good. They were elite three-point shooters, percentage-wise. All of them. So you could play them off the ball. They were comfortable catch and shoot. Less is more. One guy sets it up, I'll knock him down. At some point, when you don't have a bunch of that in your backcourt, in your lead guard, and you've got mostly pounders and guys trying to set up other guys, how far can you get with that? I think that's a big difference when I look at that, when I make those comparisons. And so am I saying there's no way? Is Arkansas in panic mode? They haven't been. We've said it, whether it's high school recruiting, whether it's portal recruiting, every cycle up to this point, they're not getting in bidding war. They're not going outside their evaluation ranges while other teams might do that to beat Arkansas for a player. It's smart. It's got to make sense for what you're trying to do on the roster. And we've been telling you what the staff's been saying. If they add anybody else, it's got to make sense. It's got to be, at one point they said somebody special. I remember that was the first reporting I gave y'all. Then they came back and said, well, it's got to make sense. Well, in Memphis yesterday, Calipari said maybe if someone's special. They used that word. I didn't make it up. That's what they gave me a few weeks ago. Yeah. So look, this is where I am with it. I see it two ways. I see the logic in what Calipari saying messaging's been, and I see the logic in you maybe got lucky last year with how things played out when you had injury issues and attrition. You could have used more 3-point shooting. There may have been some things that you could do here. And then we go back to some of the names that are out there. Jameer Watkins, who we've beaten to death, just his name and the talking points. He's in the combine, watched him today too. Guys like PJ Haggerty, Chad Baker Mazara, Jerron Pierre Jr., Lamar Wilkerson. If I can't find minutes in the current 8 deep, assuming Carter comes back, for guys like Isaiah Seeley and Kareem Ortal, it's not that you wouldn't find minutes for really good players. You certainly would, but you're going to be taking away a lot of minutes from the guys you brought back who were huge impact players. They weren't just afterthought, end of bench guys. Oh, we had retention. It's a game. It's a crapshoot because we didn't really see what they could do last year. Maybe next year they move the needle. No, these were needle movers. Your Sweet 16, damn near Elite 18. So we've said that over and over. It's frustrating because the needs are there. Perimeter shooting, maybe more depth at the guard, maybe more depth at the front line. Again, all the reasons given. All those are real, but it's also real that what's the reality? How much quality can you pack into a roster, and where more is less? Whereas agree with the staff just to cover for them. I'm calling out both sides of it. I'm saying there's value in the take that they have, and there's value in adding more. And we've gone back and forth on what that would look like, how that could possibly work. Who are some of the people out there? At one point I had a whole segment about Chad Baker Mazara being the perfect ending. If you were going to only add one more, and that got shot down along with everything else. We remember what happened. So there's that. All right. So those were the words on roster and Boogie. I asked Calipari as well. These things, again, I've tweeted out there on my Twitter account, video interview, the media scrum, and the questions I asked, the ones I tweeted, but he mentioned, we asked him about retention. Was that the most important part of what he did in the roster build? And he said no. And he's alluding to the fact that moving forward, and he went right into it because of the profit sharing, that it's going to be hard, especially for teams in the SEC, to do it that way. And you're going to have to come up with a different plan. And then he went through the balance of things for retention, for freshmen. So I don't think he wanted to focus on one part. And that's where I was going with it, because I know that was their main focus. That's where they started. Everything else has been a consequence of that retention, and they put a lot of money into that retention. I told you guys that recently off some source information I got. Everybody got big raises. But having said that, he kind of went back through everything, and then he called out a couple of individual players. In this portion of what I asked him, he said, TB, by the way, TB by the end of the year, he was as good as any big guy in talking about in the country. So, there's a case to be made there. He had 4 double-doubles in the last 7 games, and he looked at the last 9 games. He averaged over 11 points, over 9 rebounds, had multiple games where he's had multiple 3-point shot makes, shot 39% from 3 in that stretch. You look at Arkansas' success down the stretch, you understand why they feel comfortable with him as their main 4 and can back up that 5 spot. They're going to have some interesting options with the players they have, especially if you get Carter Knox back. I think, as I've said before, we'll see Carter in his big frame, big sturdy body, helping out at that small ball 4 in certain matchups. We've got 2 wings and 2 guards, or 3 guards, and him as a big wing playing that small ball 4 and a big. Interesting stuff. But he also brought up Billy. He goes, then you throw in Billy. And he said he may, and what he's able to do, and he said he may be the most unique guy in college basketball. That's what he said, Billy Richmond. You look at what he's able to do, and he may be the most unique player in college basketball. So, that's his thought on it. I'll tell you one thing about Billy Richmond. At 6'5", his length, his athleticism, he plays unafraid of physicality and contact. And he is a rim hunter. He's a head hunter. He's a guy that, the Michael Qualls vibes. I'm not saying they're exactly the same, 6'5", athletic, that kind of thing, but they both have a vicious intent when they attack bodies and try to put people in the rim. And a lot of times you're like, I don't see a pathway. If they're anything than maybe a layup or try to draw a foul. No, man, he's trying to dunk it and put your ass on the rim. So there is a quality about him that you don't see a ton of that all the time. And around college basketball, he can pass a little bit. They let him play on the ball. Positive things from Calipari. Some of the stuff, it was so loud in Fossler Hall. I mean, the place was packed. He could have body surfed through there if he wanted to. The crowd would have pushed him through. It was hard to maneuver, but when we were doing that media scrum, other than the things that were picked up on my mic when I was recording, I could listen to him play back later and then write down these quotes. A lot of it, I got bits and pieces of what he was talking about. Guys like Malik Ewan, Nick Pringle, Isaiah Seeley, Kareem Artal. He did speak on those guys. I heard bits and pieces. I think he was impressed. Some of the things he was talking about with Ewan and some of his offensive qualities and abilities and some of the things that we talk about that he'll bring to the table. And some of the qualities in Seeley and Artal that he likes. Again, stuff we've talked about and stuff that, have kind of already been on the record, but he just went back over some of that stuff. I did also ask him about the guards. I said, with DJ and Acuff and even Malik Thomas and maybe Carter playing something too, what are the dynamics there? What do you like about this group and the duo of even DJ and Acuff? And he says, just very vague, generic stuff. He says he likes the group as a whole. They're all different. They're all talented. They're all really good guys, good people. And he said that last part about good guys and good people, he said that's what carried that team through last year. And I'll never forget it. I'll never forget when Arkansas really started slowly in SEC play. And he said, Calipari, after one of those first 2 or 3 games, maybe it was the Ole Miss game at home, game 2 after getting blown out at Tennessee. Maybe it was Florida after that. It was one of those 2. And Calipari said something to the effect of, I know I've got a good team. We just got to learn, I got to teach them how to do. And a few games later, after it was 0-5 or somewhere in that, the talking point was no longer good team. He goes, I got a great group of guys. They're a bunch of great guys. And I remember talking about on one of the podcasts how he shifted the verbiage a little bit because it was an unknown where it was going. Can you say you have a good team? You keep losing. Once they turned it around, I kind of got to this thing where I'm like, it was maybe both. He knew he had a good team in there somewhere. It just hadn't bubbled up yet, but he had belief in them because he likes them. They're all good guys. Sometimes that's a scary notion, right? Are they so nice and good that they can't put the hammer down and figure out a way to be, killers and put your foot on the throat, that kind of thing. But over time, and so he reflected back on that today. I thought that was really cool of him to do that. I like that. I like what he said there. Some other things he talked about the ACC SEC challenge, and he'd like Arkansas. He'd like it to be North Carolina. Well, I've mentioned 2 teams I'd like to see there. We know Arkansas is going to play Duke in Chicago on Thanksgiving Day. That's already been announced. So who's left? North Carolina and Louisville are the 2 on my top of my wish list. Either one of those work for me. North Carolina's great. Get them back in the state. I was 14 years old when Arkansas beat number 1 ranked undefeated Michael Jordan led all kinds of NBA Hall of Famers on the floor, future Olympians in the last collegiate Olympic team to win a gold medal for the United States in '84. I mean, I was there. It's the last game I ever saw with my dad. He died of lung cancer a few months later at age 39. I was 14 years old. Big moment for me as a kid and a Razorback fan. But I'd love to see North Carolina back in the state and at Bud Walton Arena. That'd be a cool game to cover. Yeah, I'd love that. So he talked about that. Said he wants another game in New York, another non-conference game. Well, he mentioned that before. Remember last year, he was eating that up, man. He was like, yeah, we got to do this again. What talks about that again? He was, and it's what I always said. I've said it either by combination of a couple of times I've talked about him on here, Drive Time Sports, maybe also Pig Trail Nation. When they first announced he was brought on, I'm like, I could see him being really involved with football and maybe some other stuff. But Calipari, I don't know how much tampering you do with his process. This is the greatest recruiter at the high school level of all time, and a guy that understands better than anybody the importance of taking care of families. You're not talking NIL money. where's the practical application here on how he helps? Not saying he can't, but it seemed to me that it would be probably less hands-on with Calipari's operation than maybe other parts of the athletic department, specifically football. And it sounds like coming out of Calipari tonight that's true. Not as much to do with the basketball stuff. Not that he's showing disrespect, but you're asked about that stuff. You're going to talk about it. You might as well, speak on it like it is. All right, 31 minutes in. Thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. Oh, yeah. So there's a YouTube out there. I've tweeted this out before, put it on the message board. A YouTube out there of that North Carolina up. And at the end of the game, after Ballantyne hits the shot, the crowd goes wild. There's a part where the NBC national television cameras are zooming in for Al McGuire to do a courtside interview with Eddie Sutton. And they got him lined up. And I'm a kid got a hog hat, I think, under my arm, wearing a blue jacket. And I'm jumping up and down in the background. I've gone wild. I rushed the court. Dad had his oxygen tank there, so he couldn't rush the court. I rushed the court and got knocked over by Joe Klein. So that'll teach me. Joe was going nuts as well, and that was a 6'11" freight train coming at me. And I don't think I felt anything. I just popped right back up. The place was so packed though. The court was rushed. So, but I wasn't letting that hold me down. Yeah, guys, if y'all are, oh yeah, that was a long time ago. I was 14. So yeah. But Dad but Dad played a little college basketball. Our household was Razorbacks basketball, football, and a lot of professional boxing. And so that was and other stuff too. I mean, played all the sports other than soccer. That's Buckley, my assistant, in the background. If you can hear the audio, he sometimes meows. It's actually my son's cat, but I'm grandpa. All right. So let's talk Carter Knox. In the combine, we know that his measurables, we went through that yesterday. His shooting stuff, we went through all those shooting numbers. One that I didn't have that I saw the next day and tweeted that out was he did a mid drill, which is obviously inside the arc, and he moved around for basically relocating from a couple of spots. He was 25 of 30. So he did, if you look at everything, measurables, testing, agility, the max vert, especially some of this stuff, and then the shooting stuff, he didn't hurt himself. I don't know how much he is able to help himself because there's nothing freaky great about any of this that moves you from off the charts, and not anybody was projecting to be selected to now you're moved in. You've done enough to move yourself into the first round. But may be different than one team that behind is saying, hey, we don't want to wait till next year. We don't necessarily need you to be a performer this year, but we like what you have. We're going to have a need at your position and some of the qualities you have. We're going to draft you. You just don't know what it could be. So we're going to have to wait it out. The 28th is the deadline to withdraw from the draft if you want to return to college. But today, I thought he started, he didn't start. It was the second scrimmage. He came off the bench. His team was already down 10-zip. He gets in, dribble handoff situation. He drives right, pivots, a little spin cycle to the basket off that dribble handoff, got fouled. Little running shot that didn't go in for him, got fouled. Made one of 2 free throws. And of course, ESPN's coverage just frustrates me every year. Whether it's the combine or the NBA Summer League, they do so many interviews, which are cool. Interview GMs, interview college coaches, interview players in the combine that aren't in scrimmages because they're projected in the lottery. Do all that. Go nuts. Interviews, guess what? Audio. I don't need to see their faces talking in lieu of watching the action. I want to see the competition. I want to see what these players are made of, whether they represent Arkansas or else. I'm a basketball junkie. I'm here for the basketball, not to see faces in suits talking about basketball. All right, I'm off my soapbox now. But so I missed some of the Carter Knox minutes. It just did. Sometimes they were at commercial break. Those ran long. They came back, and another minute and a half, 2.5 minutes had elapsed off game clock while he'd been in. So missed some stuff. But I saw some really good stuff. What really stood out to me was Carter did a really good job in space, hustling 50-50. Whether it was a long rebound, just a loose ball, tapping the ball, just really being aggressive in some of those plays that help win games. And several possessions for his team that he was prolonged, just scrapping for an offensive rebound or just getting the ball. sometimes it's those little things that add up while you're building the other parts of your game. And he kind of thought out a little bit. He didn't have a great shooting game, but I saw him. But he finished 2 of 6 from the field, 1 of 3 of 4 at the foul line, 8 points. He had 5 rebounds. From what I saw, I counted 4 or 5. So that's what they credited him with, was 5. And I saw 2 steals, and that's what they credited him. So I saw that. I missed some of the missed shots because I saw every point that he scored except one free throw when they cut away. But I knew he made it because they came right back and showed the scoreboard, and that was the first point for his team. Playing off the bench, they were down 10-0. It was 10-1 on his second free throw. He missed the first one. That I did see. So, he looked fine. He did some things that you see that project to the NBA. 3-and-D kind of guy. Big, strong body. I talked about the hustle plays. There were times defensively where he used that physicality and that body to wall off drivers, to kind of get in there and give some resistance. There were other times where he didn't get his footwork right and position right, and he could have been called for a foul. Probably would if it was a real NBA game. And it was a couple of breakdowns there. There was early when he checked in. There's a couple of times where he was flat-footed initially. I mentioned all the hustle plays, but initially there were a couple of times where he was a little bit flat-footed and kind of ball watch. And then once he got engaged, he started to figure out a little bit. Now, this is a combine drills. These aren't the best players. The top guys that are going to get drafted are sitting out. And some of the other guys, like I do Thero, some of them didn't even do measurements with clutch agency. I think some did. I don't know if some of the agility testing or not. I know that they didn't play in game in the scrimmages, and they didn't do the shooting drills. So that's just how clutch rolls. And that's Thero. And so you're going to be looking at their pro day and some of these other things where they really control what the setting is and what you see. Thero went through measurements. He did not do agility testing. He's not playing in the competitive stuff. And he's got the knee situation. The rules changed since Nick was there. If you agree and accept an invitation to the combine, you've got to go through the stuff or not be at the combine. With the exception of you can opt out of the scrimmaging, or if you have an injury, you can opt out of some of the other testing stuff. And so that's what he's elected to do. The measurables were fine. We went over that the other day. But and now Boogie Fland, persona non grata at the combine, coming back to school as it were. All right, tomorrow, JJ Andrews. I'm going to wrap up here. 40 minutes announcement. I told you the Boogie is not that great. Why would we? No, he's a really good player. He's the kind of guy you would absolutely want to have back if you weren't already loaded at that one spot, because that's what he is, and he's looking for that main role. As is on some level DJ, knowing that A-Cuff's bringing the same challenge for DJ that Boogie did last year. And how did that start out? Both Boogie and DJ on the court together, and it was awkward a lot, right? Until Boogie was gone. It's not because Boogie wasn't good. It was because there was a lot of good. And as Calipari said, sometimes less is more, and it slotted guys to their more natural position, more natural roles, challenged guys to produce more because your top producing guard was out, and it put a different light on everything. That could have blown up and been a disaster too. It worked out. That doesn't mean Boogie's not any good. That's crazy talking. And I don't mean to call you crazy. I'm just saying for me, I would never go there. I don't see it that way. But we'll see. Boogie, once you got into SEC play, did struggle against that athleticism and physicality and quality, but it was a small sample size, and the whole team was struggling. You still had some of your key guys dealing with injuries and slow to get going, and that can junk it up for everybody. And when the dysfunction can permeate, so it's hard to know and judge him just yet. Certainly, the NBA draft is judging him right now. I don't think he comes back if he felt good about where that was going. So that's partially true. All right, JJ Andrews tomorrow. I brought you the intel yesterday. We talked about this. I always said this is going to be about who's going to bring the big NIL purse and promise some level of significant role. This is a player that's been a 5-star most of his high school, when you look at the ratings and that. Lately, fallen a little bit. ESPN has him as the 22nd best player. That's his highest rating. They've dropped him to a 4-star, but 6'6" wing at the Little Rock Christian Academy. But it was always going to be about who's going to prioritize him. So part of that money talks and everything else takes the bus, right? We always say that. But it always corresponds with, well, if you're paying a guy, you have something envisioned for him beyond somewhere in the pack, right? And so Arkansas can prioritize multiple five-star guys because they're recruiting 3 or 4 of those a year. Calipari talks about it. We'll take 3 or 4. He's trying to load up on the five-star guys. You're not going to get the same pitch as you will maybe from a Dennis Gates at Missouri or McMahon at LSU, where, hey, you're the five-star guy we're riding with. You're our main high school recruit. Yeah, mix, and we're going to build around you. They can deliver that kind of thing. Not to say that Arkansas doesn't have that for some players, but when you're pursuing multiple, it may not be quite the same. And again, Arkansas doesn't get into bidding wars. Missouri, the intel was. They have, I don't know precisely when. I just found out about it yesterday, and we talked about it yesterday. I said within the last few days. So in real time, while I'm delivering that news, is there enough wiggle room in where their range is to bump it up and be comparable or better? Don't know that. Don't have any information on that. Can't ask Cal about it because he can't talk about high school players until they're signed, sealed, and delivered, and the NCAA has certified it. So can't bring that up today, you know? So it's a timing thing. Did Arkansas have enough time to respond in a way that works? Is this something that I found out about it yesterday and it's been in the works for a while with Missouri? And it's been a situation that's even longer than I know, where they've been the leader in terms of how much NIL. The Missouri people think they're getting him. I'm just telling you that. There's other reporting out there by a national recruiting analyst, one of the best ones out there, Eric Bossy. Apparently, I was told about it and sent a screenshot of it later. You know, I was a lot of traveling yesterday in Oklahoma City covering that game, but he seems to think Missouri's the leader there. All I know is I'm told Missouri's the leader in the NIL part. Where does that leave things? Can Arkansas get to a place where that's no longer the case coming down the last minute here? Tomorrow's the announcement date here in the 501. Another important basketball day. I'll be there. So we'll see. But, you know, I think it's smart, no matter who it is, in-state kid, portal player, five-star recruit, international player, whatever, retention. You don't get out of your range. Arkansas didn't get out of its range on what it planned for Big Z, and he walked. That's smart. Don't do it ever. They have been consistent with that. Again, they are not going to get in a bidding war, and they're not going to really want him. No, I've always said the staff feels like they prioritized him, but they have a ceiling for what that looks like for them. And if some other school's willing to outbid that just to win a recruiting battle, it's not worth Arkansas to chase all that all the time. At some point, you're just spending money, and you're not necessarily doing what's best for your roster build. Someone's asking if it'll be live. I don't know if they'll live stream it or how they have it planned in there tomorrow. I'll get over there and we'll see. You know me, I'll be on Twitter putting out all kinds of content and prelim, pre-game and in-game and post-game and after, post-mortem or whatever. We'll get some content out there and we'll deliver the news, good or bad. It's coming. That train's coming, isn't it? All right. Thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. I think we've covered most everything. I will say this. I've covered several NBA games, and it was really cool. This atmosphere last night. A playoff game is just different. And we're in the Western Conference semifinals, arguably the best team in the NBA right now in the Oklahoma City Thunder. They had the best record in the league this year, set some, records, one of only like a handful or 6 teams all time to win at least 68 games. The best record when you looked at it playing against another conference. I think only 1 loss against the Eastern Conference this year. All kinds of stuff. But it's a team that last year is the 1 seed in the Western Conference. In Game 5 against Dallas, lost that game, then lost Game 6, and they were out. Still the youngest team in the NBA. But in a game that went to the wire, it was a classic. I mean, the Joker, 44 points, 20 rebounds, something crazy. Jamal Murray was on his game most of the night. You saw Shea putting up 31, Lou Dort hitting threes, J-Dub out there doing his thing. But you saw Jalen Williams, the Pro Hog, in his limited minutes, most of it coming in the second half, third quarter, and then fourth quarter. Some really big defensive stops against Joker. He's giving him fits all series. On a night when he scores 44 and you get a couple of stops, you get some defensive rebounds. You had 2 really good setup assists in a run when you were down 9 in the fourth quarter. This game was a classic. It was anybody's game with under 2 minutes to go. A lot of NBA games, people make the joke, well, you don't have to watch an NBA game, just watch the last 2 minutes. Look, great players all over the place. Arkansas ties, John Calipari ties with SGA, Cason Wallace with the Thunder, Jamal Murray, who I just mentioned with Denver. I mean, it was all kinds of good stuff going on in there. It was worth the drive home and getting here at 5:30 a.m. I loved every minute of it. It was a classic. It was a lot of fun, I guess. I've said that already. All right, really, I am signing off now. Thanks for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. I'm Kevin McPherson. If you've done it already, please hit subscribe, like, and share. I don't think anything will break tonight, but if it does, I'll jump back on. Otherwise, I'll be on tomorrow. I'm probably going to I'm going to try to watch, if it comes on early enough, the next scrimmage for Carter Knox at the Combine. But I'll have to get out to Little Rock Christian Academy for that announcement. I think it's scheduled for 4. And then I'm probably going to do another evening, one of these, so I can recap everything. That's probably how we're going to roll. I might set up out at Little Rock Christian if things go well and roll some facts straight from that place, if like I did with Isaiah Sealy on his commitment announcement date. And we did a HogvilleNET YouTube Live with him, an interview. That was really good. All right, folks, thanks for being here. Until tomorrow or sooner, take care of yourselves. We'll see you then.